Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It was a little bit eventful, wasn't it, yesterday at Anfield? Football took precedent, but people talked about a lot more off the field as well, and post-match, before match, all things coming up this summer. We're here to talk through it all, and as ever, I'm joined by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, it's actually at the moment, we thought as this came towards the title march, it might be a bit quiet. Not a bit of it, eh?
No, exactly. This is it. I didn't think there'd be many talking points in this game. And you kind of, during the match, just thinking, there's no kind of analysis there to be had because ultimately, do Liverpool throw away a 2-goal lead if they've not got the title wrapped up? There's not, can Arsenal play as freely if they're not just trying to salvage some pride? All these kind of factors. But it's just completely, there's nothing too much to be read into the game. But fortunately, there were other talking points that kind of arose off the back of it. So it's, it's making the run-in, I guess, a little bit more interesting than it might have been. But it's, there's no chance of there being nothing to talk about, that's for sure.
Yeah, which means, ladies and gents, we can get right into it. And I suppose we should talk about the game ultimately and what happened with this to start with. So an interesting game, a point shared, the gap stays the same, but probably the most interesting thing is this almost the opposite of what we normally see? This season, slow, tentative out the blocks, work it out at half-time, come out in the second half and blow teams away. That's been the style that Liverpool have done it. This was the opposite way around a little bit, wasn't it, yesterday?
Yeah, I wonder whether kind of the atmosphere played a part in that it was, the guard of honour and the party mode around Anfield kind of gave them a little bit of a lift coming into it in terms of just, burst out the blocks and start quickly and be on the front foot. And they were definitely that. And I mean, it was kind of, I don't feel like we've seen a lot of that under Slot where it's kind of two goals in quick succession. That's kind of, in my mind, a very Jurgen Klopp type of thing. So, that was kind of a bit of a throwback, really. And you kind of thought when you go 2-0 up that there's every chance, and particularly because Jones has that chance straight after as well to make it 3-0. Really good save from that it was going to be one of those days where the opposition get blown away. So it was a really, really good first half performance. But I guess after that, there was kind of a little bit of, kind of complacency maybe setting in the second half after an acknowledgement that really, if Liverpool had desperately needed to defend that lead, I'm absolutely certain that they would have if, the title was on the line, there was any chance of Arsenal getting close. Even if it had been, say, a 6-point gap coming into this game, I think Liverpool would have won that game, no questions asked. But you just have that thing in the back of your mind that you're not desperately fighting for it. You're not putting your body on the line. And so that allowed things to maybe change in the second half. And I also, and I said this in my YouTube yesterday, huge credit to Arsenal as well, because it would have been so easy to fold. And I thought they showed great spirit and they were very good in that second half. So a combination of those factors is why you get two halves that were completely different, really.
Yeah, they were just weirdly different. And you shouldn't be sort of belligerent about first versus second, what it means. But after that equaliser in the 70th minute, both teams just wanted the full-time whistle blown, didn't they, essentially? No one was really bothered. Like, everyone's got some pride. They would have just ended it if they could have done.
Yeah, I guess so. Kind of shake hands on a 2-2 draw, 2 draws from the season and kind of honours even in that regard. And that's it. There was significance in that result for Arsenal in terms of, I kind of compare it almost to, you remember the 2-2 draw against them a couple of seasons ago at Anfield where Liverpool were 2-0 down and Arsenal are chasing the title and, Liverpool fight back, don't they, in that game, and that gives them a platform for the next season. And maybe Arsenal will look at this game as kind of similar for them, is that this has been a forgettable season, but, they fought back there. They proved that they're not as far off as people say, and maybe that gives them a bit of pride and something to take forward. And for Liverpool, gets the Chelsea defeat out of the system. They've shown enough in stages of the game that they are very good and absolutely deserving champions. And, it's all about getting through the remainder of this season, trying a couple of things, yes, but not getting any injuries and not putting too much on the line, I guess, really. And, the fact that they're not really training at the moment as well is, an indication that they're not putting absolutely everything into these games. But I think, we've spoken so much about, people might get frustrated about that. They should be winning every game. They're getting paid this, that, and the other. But we've spoken so many times about kind of the lack of rotation at times this season and players being driven into the ground a little bit. So if you have this situation where you've got 4 games between now and the end of the season and they mean nothing and you are already champions, do use them as a mini break, make your substitutions early, make some changes, do some things that you wouldn't do. Leave McAllister out of the side yesterday. Do make those decisions, because at the end of the day, another absolutely relentless season will be starting very, very soon. So, just make your calls now in terms of taking players off earlier than you would, not necessarily massively chasing the game, not giving everything to a defender lead, because you've earned the right to do that by storming the title. So we shouldn't forget that, really.
Yeah, and you might actually get the benefit in the longer run and into next season as well. So, yeah, fingers crossed that scene. And for all the drama on the pitch, off the pitch, people almost forget there was some big calls involved. I mean, the big ones that the referee made, they were right. Marino should have gone, and Robertson's winner shouldn't have stood as well.
Yeah, stupid for Marino, really. And I know Arsenal feel like they've been quite hard done by officials this season. And I would agree around a couple of calls, quite kind of unlucky maybe. And ones you've seen given or not given have gone against them. But, not all of those 6 red cards they've got in the Premier League this season are completely unjustified. And, if you play on the line and you're constantly battling, you're always in duels and you're lunging in for things as Marino did, you leave yourself open to getting cards. And I just don't know how you could have any complaints about that one, really. So I thought that was a spot-on decision, and Arsenal couldn't complain about that one. And that's something they've got to fix going into next season is discipline, because they do receive an awful lot of red cards, even plenty of which are justified. And also, the last-minute goal, I think that there's a clear push, isn't there? I think Konate nearly takes Lewis Skelly's head off. And then I actually think Robertson might have been offside from the header as well. Yeah. So a couple of reasons to disallow that one. And they got that one right as well.
Yeah, no need for too much overreaction. But Ibu's go at rearranging Lewis Skelly's face, or Partey's face, it was quite interesting as well. So, probably all fair decisions on that. And players, we always focus
on... Sorry, I didn't realise it was Partey. That probably makes it even better that he was doing that to him, to be honest.
I think, people have got opinions on that. But for our players, the 2 left-sided players, and I'm saying left-sided because Luis Díaz was in his false 9 position as well, in a good way, we've got used to seeing these 2 scoring at Anfield this season and coming up with big goals, haven't they? They have had a good game, both Gakpo and Díaz yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been good throughout the season. I mean, the fact that you've got both now into double figures in the Premier League, we've spoken all season about how Mo's been dragging things forward, and there does need to be tweaks to that forward line in the summer. There's no question in my mind that it can go from very, very good to kind of elite as well. That work needs to be done in the summer to the front line. But, we shouldn't do down what they've got there. I mean, Gakpo, 10 Premier League goals this season. I think Luis Díaz, 13, if I'm right, with both those numbers. That's a very, very good return. It puts them in the top, the top few scorers in the Premier League, alongside having the top scorer in the Premier League. So they've been a very, very good supporting cast. I mean, the big problem is you would have wanted more from Núñez, you would have wanted more from Jota, and they've been both very disappointing, really, this summer, haven't they? But, at the end of the day, I think that those 2 lads can hold their heads high in terms of what they've contributed, and not Díaz particularly because of what he's been asked to do as well in the centre-forward role, and done very well there. So, good goals from them again yesterday, but they've had very, very good seasons, I would say.
Yeah, very good. Both, I think, 17 or 18 goals for one or the other overall. So that's really impressive as a combination. But you mentioned the main man yesterday. Will Salah almost be livid, because he'll be thinking, how is Luis Díaz not giving me assist when I square it to him in the box? Point blank, just put it to a side. And you saw his reaction when Gakpo didn't just roll it across. He'll be looking at that and thinking, that was a goal and assist game for me, and you lot have blown it a little bit, won't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's just been unlucky with these assists recently that they've dried up, because he's still creating chances, absolutely. I mean, that one yesterday, how that doesn't end up in the back of the net. Absolutely brilliant save, to be fair to David Raya. But it should just be getting scored, really, shouldn't it? And it just kind of adds to the feeling that Liverpool had an absolute killer in centre-forward, that they would be a much better team, as good as Díaz has been, and credit to him for that. So he was very, very unlucky there. And there have been some missed chances in recent weeks as well from really good Salah potential assists. So it just shows you, as good as as good as he's been and how close he's got to the record, you need a bit of luck. But equally, there's 2 games left to get 3 assists. You can be like London buses. You can just get them in clumps. So still holding out that hope that he can get them. And I really, really hope he can. But you need luck, as I say, and you need your mates to be finishing them off. So hopefully he can get it. And I would say with Salah yesterday, he's crucial, isn't he, to one of those goals with the ball he plays in behind. Brilliant. So, his creativity is still absolutely there.
Yeah, absolutely elite. But the other 2, definitely worth a shout out. And another man that is worth a shout out, Robbo as well. I mean, it's not been the greatest of seasons, we can't pretend. But I mean, even thinking yesterday, it's a brilliant assist. He has a disallowed goal. He misses a great chance to win it anyway, doesn't he? Where you're thinking, just put it in. And then I think he spoke well in his post-match interview about the situation at the same time. Hell of a day for Robbo yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's just a class act, I think. I mean, I think some of the stuff around how bad his season's been is a little overblown as well, personally, as well. I mean, I don't think he started the season well, but I think he's been pretty strong recently. And the fact is, he's been in the Liverpool side and been mostly the starting left back for a team that, has won the title at a canter and was well on track to get kind of 92, 94 points at the point they won the league. So a really good winning total. So you just cannot carry a complete liability at left back in a team that's winning that frequently. It isn't possible. You get found out. So the extent to which he's had a poor season, as I say, I think is a little overblown. And I just think he's been, he's just a fantastic servant, great attitude, full of energy. He's got quality. I mean, that's his first Premier League assist of the season, but that's a joke, really. That again shows you that assists there's so much luck involved and so much you need people to finish them off, because his crossing is still there. Maybe not as good as it has been in the past, but he's still very, very good at putting balls in. So, I just think he's a top class servant, brilliant player, great attitude, great kind of ambassador for the club as well. His role will be reduced next season somewhat because Liverpool will sign in that position. But what a great option he is to have down that left-hand side.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see about the left-hand side, and we'll talk about that shortly. But the comments are flowing on this, the article that you've written this morning that was out. I'm sure most people are mentioning it in the chat panel there. G95 calling it a brilliant article. It's well worth a read as well, ladies and gents. Now, this was always going to be the talking point of today about Trent Alexander-Arnold, the situation, everything that happened. One of the things I really liked about this article, which I think a few maybe have missed the point, everyone's entitled to have an opinion on this and a say, aren't they? And if fans pay their money to come into their stadium, they're entitled to react that way if they want, aren't they, essentially?
Yeah, this is exactly it. I mean, I know... From personally, I think if I was in the cop yesterday rather than in the press box, I maybe would have. I think I personally would have, just thinking about it, would have maybe gone down the route of doing nothing, maybe not clapping, but not kind of booing. I maybe would have personally. That's how I felt, and it's funny as well because it's so conflicting, and people do have their opinions, and they are so different from person to person. I texted a good mate of mine, season ticket holder on the cop. He was there yesterday with his 2 brothers. They're all 3 of them hold season tickets, sat next to each other. One of them applauded, one of them booed, and one of them did nothing. And that's 3 brothers. And I thought that really perfectly encapsulated to me that everyone's going to have a different view on it. And that's 3 lads who have very similar upbringings and shared experiences. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And that is the thing, is that everybody's going to react differently, and ultimately, as you say, paying fans have every right to have that opinion and to voice it however they want. And, they've no other, the ones who did boo, I don't think it was 100% of the crowd, no way. I think it was a mixture really of that kind of 3 different things going on. But I think the ones who did boo, they've got no other option to show their dissatisfaction. Boo from the stands. What else is he supposed to do? Because I doubt he's reading his Instagram comments at the moment, and I'd advise him not to as well, by the way. So, and ultimately a boo is kind of, it's all a bit pantomime, isn't it? It's not, the worst thing that's ever happened. We've seen quite a bit of pearl clutching about it. So I just think fans are entitled to that. And for all the reasons I set out in the piece as well, in terms of why they would be frustrated about that, because I certainly understand the frustration, even if maybe personally I wouldn't have booed. I'd have gone a different route. I absolutely understand why people are annoyed, 100%. So I just tried to put all that down in the article, really, to express why that frustration is there. Because what we're seeing a lot of is not just people disagreeing with how it was expressed, because I know there's disagreements among the fan base itself in terms of how it was expressed, but people saying they shouldn't be annoyed at all. That, to me, is complete nonsense, really, and I totally reject those suggestions. So just kind of wanted to write that all down, really.
Yeah, the moral grandstanding has gone on well and truly. It'll probably continue for a while, and we'll see how this one develops. I suppose the only other bit I wanted to ask you about is Arne Slot in this, because you'll have seen the reactions. People were saying, well, Arne Slot saw his name getting booed, or would have heard his boo getting named up when the lineups are done by Peter McDowell, so surely he doesn't do it there. Others saying, well, Arne Slot's job is to win games of football for Liverpool and doing that. I know we'll never get it from him, but do you think in the cold light of day, Slot will look back and think, was that the best thing?
Yeah, I think he should do. And I do think it was a mistake at the end of the day, because, he can say post-match, and it's a fair point of view in that, his job is to try and win the matches and to get the best player on the pitch, which, Trent Alexander-Arnold is absolutely one of those. He's a class player who can win you a game, but it just created such a circus and a distraction and a toxic atmosphere that wasn't conducive to winning a football game, that I think his quality was overridden by the effect he had on the atmosphere and what that did to the team and the confusion it caused. So I actually don't think that substitution helped him winning the game. And, this is not just kind of me saying this with hindsight either. And, people can choose not to believe me or whatever. I'm trying to maybe make a point, but I spoke to Joycey pre-match. We were just having a chat about the match and the situation around it. And I said to him, if there needs to be a right-back substitution in this game, and there probably will be because of Conor Bradley, you got to manage him, got to be careful. It should be Quansah, because there will be some boos, there will be an effect on the atmosphere, and things will go wrong. So I promise you, it's not just me saying that with hindsight in terms of what happened. You could see it coming a mile off. And the fact is, even if 10% booed, it's so loud in comparison to the applause that you hear it, and it does have an effect. So I just think the manager badly misjudged that. But ultimately, how many decisions has he got wrong this season? Not very many at all. So give him a complete pass for that. But I do think he did got it wrong, and he misjudged it, really, and that kind of contributed to the result not being a win in the end.
Yeah, probably. I think that's the fairest way of putting it. And I suppose for Liverpool and the way they're doing it, because they're off to Dubai now as well, we're being told. Does it almost just feel like everyone almost just wants this season over to get to the last day, get to Crystal Palace, celebrate, then move the summer plans on? It just almost feels like maybe this and other things just need to move it forward, don't we?
Yeah, I think with all this, I think the best way to put it to bed for me would really be to just not have Trent involved in the last couple of games, or possibly a parade. And I don't want that to come across as vindictiveness or not wanting to recognise how brilliant he's been for Liverpool. But there's always going to be that percentage who are going to boo him and going to make it uncomfortable. And that makes it uncomfortable for everybody else, all the other players who should be getting celebrated and should be able to live every moment and enjoy it. I just brings a sadness to it. So, and it soured yesterday for me a little bit personally. I mean, it was one of the best atmospheres I've seen at Anfield for the first kind of 60 minutes. It was absolutely mega. And then all we're talking about now, and all it felt like in that last half an hour, was this kind of negativity around it. And, whether you think that's right or wrong, that is the situation. That is how some supporters feel. And as long as that is the case, I just don't think, I think Trent himself should take the decision really to pull away from these situations, because it's bringing bad headlines and it's bringing negativity. And again, someone who says he absolutely loves Liverpool, doesn't he, and wants to care for Liverpool's best interests. I think the wise decision would be to not be involved in these last couple of games. But we'll see how that plays out, really.
Yeah, it will be the one to see how it plays out and whether it dominates or overshadows things. But I suppose moving forward, even from there, we're going to ask you about the transfers and contracts, because things are ramping up. I mean, it is only about 3 weeks until transfer window 1 opens on the 1st of June. And this isn't a new name. It feels like a boomerang style name, I'm going to call it. We're coming back round to it. So Jeremy Frimpong, Leverkusen, homegrown, right wing back, you'd probably say, can also play right wing. It seemed almost on Friday night as the embargo dropped, a concerted briefing, many of the patch journos mentioning Jeremy Frimpong will be of interest to Liverpool. Had anything on it yourself? Heard anything more on this one at all?
Yeah, it's a funny one, this. I'm kind of umming and ahhing about how to kind of place this. I had a conversation this week whereby someone who I would implicitly trust and as a source kind of said to me that they would be surprised, to be honest, if this happened. And I understand that quite a few reporters have mentioned the name, but I think there's a lot to kind of take from kind of how it's being mentioned and context and the way this is being written. So this isn't me. Please don't take this as me doing down any other journalists or throwing doubt on anything they've written, because I think what they've written is correct. I think it's the way it's being interpreted is maybe incorrect. In that, I would totally accept that Liverpool would see Frimpong as an option that's out there, that's available. The fee is very, very cheap for a player with a high level of experience. He's homegrown as well, so loads of factors to like about him. And I also think from the player's side, I think we're seeing a clear push that he will be very, very much open to the move. But I think the reason that it's been said to me that someone would be surprised if it would happen is that I don't know whether that's kind of Liverpool banging down Leverkusen's door to get the deal done. I think it may be something they turn to in the end if the market doesn't work out the way they want to. The concerns about Conor Bradley's injury history are there, and they think it's enough to maybe do the deal if Frimpong would be happy with the role he was given. But I've just not got this impression that they're absolutely desperate to do it. And I think there are other options they would maybe look at to kind of, secure that right back spot. And, maybe that would be a centre half who can play out there and give Conor Bradley the games. And, maybe that will be the approach. But I'm not massively convinced that Frimpong will end up signing for Liverpool as things stand. I think it's an option for Liverpool. They know it's an appealing option and an easy one to do. But I kind of want to, I'm probably going to put my neck on the line a little bit here and say I trust that source implicitly, and I don't think he will sign for Liverpool as things stand.
Will be interesting to see who the right back enforcement, if there is a right back enforcement. But the other one who really came into the mix, Vanderson, Brazilian, quite young at Monaco. So L'Equipe mentioned him, and not really too many suggestions from the UK. Heard anything on that name at all?
No, nothing outside of he is definitely someone who will be being watched in terms of profile and age and league he's playing in, but nothing kind of further beyond that. I guess Liverpool have got a big decision to make around this, don't they, in terms of what is Conor Bradley's role for next season and how do you split that with someone else? Is it, do you bring in someone older who can kind of back him up as an experienced option? Do you sign the centre half that you sign who is able to play at right back? Do you persist with Quanta there? They've got some kind of big decisions to make around this. And so a lot of these options are kind of on the table. But as I say, whether that will culminate, the only thing I can kind of say is that I'm not massively convinced that culminates in signing a right wing back who has essentially spent the last couple of seasons playing as a right winger, to be honest.
Yeah, it is an interesting one to see how that develops. And I mean, the other side of the pitch at left back, these names just keep being the same a little bit. Aït-Nouri mentioned and referenced in a few articles with a new agency there as well. And also, Milos Kerkez, it's important to say, a few had him today as a strong favourite. It's been pitched in a few articles. Still think it still feels like it's going to be Kerkez or Aït-Nouri a bit, doesn't it?
I still feel like left back's up for debate. I don't think you could hang your hat on anyone. As I say, I've always been of the thinking that Aït-Nouri is still in the mix. I think I said that a few weeks ago. I don't think that that's kind of been ruled out just yet. And the fact he's changing agency amid talks that Wolves want to tie him down to a new contract, that kind of rings alarm bells for me in terms of there's a real possibility then that they accept if he doesn't sign a new contract, they will have to do a deal this summer. And they've also put out what his kind of fee would be to get him. So, he remains to me a really interesting option that I think it would be foolish to rule out at this point. I think, that's one of a few there. So the only thing I would say around that is, I know Kirk is definitely on the list and he's up there. but not absolutely nailed on maybe in the way that is being suggested. So again, we will kind of see how they progress with that.
Would we, and people have referenced this as well, because almost we know the top 7, the Champions League places is done. It's just all scrapping for who ends up where. So a lot of clubs like Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, their season's almost finished a little bit in terms of what they can achieve too much. So do you think with that in mind, we might start seeing things advance in the next week or so? Because we'd heard that Liverpool wanted to be respectful to Bournemouth, but Bournemouth can't qualify for Europe now. So do you think we might start getting a bit more this week or so?
I think with Bournemouth, is it not right that they are slightly still in contention because of where the European spots might end up going down to with the FA Cup final, possibly? Yeah. So we will kind of have to see with that. I just wonder whether they're going to kind of... Yeah, I just think that the end of the season makes more sense before we start seeing things. I think in terms of, respectfulness, and even if you're not necessarily competing for anything, I still think it makes more sense to kind of hang on a little bit before making any moves. But that early window is definitely in contention for someone like a Dean House, and that to me looks certain that he will get a really firm idea in that in terms of where he's going. So there can be some early business done, but I just don't think we'll hear anything concrete before the season's up.
Yeah, I mean, he was going to be the next name. There's a Dean House in Liverpool or Chelsea, Arsenal story every week, but it does feel like it's intrinsically linked with the deafening silence around anything progressing with Ibou Konaté, doesn't it? That just seems very quiet in the worst sense right now as well.
Yeah, but do you know what? Personally, I don't really see this as I know some journalists have kind of linked it, and I've kind of maybe done it myself when I've talked about the centre-half situation as a whole, but I don't necessarily see, and I don't think Liverpool see Huijsen as a Konaté replacement. He doesn't make sense in those terms. In terms of what you would lose in terms of experience and aerial duel success. Liverpool, if they lost Konaté this summer and they made the decision to sell him immediately to Real Madrid or whatever, they would have to replace him with someone who is first team ready. Huijsen is someone who needs a little bit of looking after and building up, and he can't come in and replace Konaté. Or I could say that as good as he is and as big a talent he is, Liverpool will be significantly worse next season because he isn't of Konaté's level just yet. So, I don't think those two are kind of inextricably linked. And I think this is a deal that Liverpool still want to do. They're still in contention for, but the players got to kind of hit the green light to one of the clubs that's involved. And we don't quite know who that's going to be yet.
Yeah, again, something that we'll find out in the next few weeks.
Just to jump in, by the way, I see in the comments kind of people saying... Lynch said Frimpong's a no-go. I didn't kind of say that. I said, let's please use this in context. This is the problem with talking about transfers and talking honestly. It's so risky, and we end up putting our reputations at risk by talking about it in an honest way. In that, I'm not saying that it's not possible. He's definitely they see that as a deal that can definitely be done and is easy to do. They know all the conditions are there. They know that the player will want to do it. But I wouldn't necessarily say, and judging by people I've spoken to, that he's right at the top of the list. And it's not, I'm not saying it's not happening. It's definitely possible that Liverpool can get in a situation where they look at the market and think, do you know what? That's the best we can do there. That's probably worthwhile doing. He's happy with the role that we would give him, blah, 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 and move forward with it. But I'm just not as convinced in the same way that everybody else is that Liverpool are signing Frimpong. I'm not saying that I would disagree with, and doesn't kind of tally with what I'm hearing. And I think there are other options he would prefer to go to. So, let's kind of see what happens with that. But, let's interpret it as the way I'm kind of trying to communicate it.
Yeah.
These things are complex, and I don't want to strip all nuance out and now say, Lynch says absolutely no chance Frimpong signs. He's rubbish, blah, blah. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I would believe wholeheartedly that the person I was talking to said that they would be surprised. I too would be surprised. But, it's there, and the deal could be done, and Liverpool have it as an option to be done if they feel that that's the right way to go down.
Yeah. And also it's important to say, there's a lot of names coming out now all of a sudden around right back, like Frimpong, Van der Sar, who we mentioned, Wesley at Flamengo. There's been a lot of talk about those positions. So, there's nothing that we can be certain on at all. And speaking of things you can't be certain on, Frankfurt, I don't know if we're just almost various headlines with them, but Bild in Germany saying that Ekitike's name comes back up as a forward. Hugo Larsson, another name that almost feels like it's coming back up. Endo possibly even going there. Does this just feel like an easy link for a journalist or Bild to put together in some way, or do you think there's anything in it at all?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I've not personally heard anything on this one, so I can't really vouch for this one. But it's interesting that I think if they were to kind of sign, if Endo was to come at the end of the season and say he wants to go, which I think is on the table as a possibility, we don't concretely know yet, but I think it's in play as a possibility, that the ideal replacement for him really would be kind of someone young who you can mould, someone who will be kind of happy with Endo minutes and still think that's enough, but who is talented and can become a big player in the future. I think that would be kind of an ideal situation for Liverpool to put themselves in. And he's not the only midfielder of that kind of age bracket that we've heard of who's been linked. So that kind of those kind of links, as I say, I've not heard anything personally on this one. They do make a little bit of sense to me.
Yeah, could well be a price element there. And this name, people will be desperate for you to hype up. Rodrygo, Real Madrid, left out the lineup, wasn't he, for El Clasico? A lot of talk from the Spanish camps that he will be on the move, that Real Madrid will be looking to cash in, if that's the right phrase. Anything we've heard around Liverpool and Rodrygo at all?
I've only ever known that they kind of have liked him in the past. That doesn't always mean that they'll kind of like him in the future. Because I mean, I've heard that so many times where stuff has been said in the past about a player being liked by Liverpool, and everyone's like, they hold on to that for years. Then, so I always think the really good example of this is Christian Pulisic, where Liverpool did like him that summer, and then it didn't happen, and he stayed at Dortmund for a little bit longer, and then eventually he just ends up signing for Chelsea, and because he hadn't kicked on in the way that Liverpool thought he might, and it wasn't at that point a deal that they thought was worth doing. So I always thought that's a really good example. So I'm not quite sure what the current feeling is around Rodrygo and whether that interest is still there. He's obviously still very young and puts up decent numbers. But of course, if he's a Real Madrid cast off, is that necessarily where Liverpool want to go? Or do they think it's kind of a Gravenberch situation where they've misjudged it or whatever? Yeah. I don't know that one at the moment. But I would, as I say, you can't always guarantee that they will like a player forever. So not really sure with that one.
Yeah. You feel that it's going to be a big fee and big wages for whoever gets him. So we'll see if there's anything in that one down the line. And we should talk about our existing players, because I know people are watching him recently, but the stories with Darwin Núñez continue, don't they? Napoli, we've heard the Atletico links, Saudi even stories around for the 1st of June and have him in place for the Club World Cup. We've talked about the importance of a number 9. Does Darwin hold a large part of the key to our summer and where he ends up going, essentially?
Yeah, not necessarily where, maybe, mate, but I think just the fact that he is going is a crucial part of it. I think one thing you can say is he's guaranteed to go. Yeah. He's willing to go. There's so much interest out there, and potential for a bidding war. And the fact he'd be happy to go to Saudi is pretty helpful, really, in terms of boosting the coffers as well. And if that's the one that he ends up opting for. So, I think the fact is, and the fact there's interest as well that could be wrapped up early is so helpful for Liverpool. If they can get him off the books in that kind of the early June window, then, absolutely brilliant for them in terms of planning the window and seeing what that looks like, and knowing then we can progress on a centre forward. This is perfect. We're going to have the funds to do that immediately before even thinking about other signings. So, it's a pretty ideal situation to be in with that one, in that they've got a player who doesn't work for them, but many other clubs think he can work for them and will pay a decent fee for him. So yeah, they're in a good situation with that one. And I think it's one of the few certainties of the window, really, is that Darwin Núñez will definitely leave. It's one of the ones who've been able to trail for months and months that he will be going, because there is that strong interest in him there.
Yeah, it might be even one that you feel could be very early in the window. We'll have to see on that one. But other existing players, Luis Díaz, we've talked about him and his contract, but obviously quotes from this morning, Luis Díaz saying, "For me, I would stay at Liverpool, however many years it takes. It also depends on the club, everything." These are the details that are sorted out separately. Also talked from those serialized quotes about wanting to stay, wanting to speak at the end of the season. It still feels a bit up in the air with Díaz, isn't it? Before everyone gets high on this, like 28 years old. If you're going to cash in on him, now's the time, isn't it? Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I just don't put sort of these quotes as he's definitely staying.
No, absolutely not. I think these quotes are showing that he wants a new deal and a pay rise, absolutely. And I still get no impression really that Liverpool are absolutely desperate to give him one. Personally, I mean, it wouldn't really make sense to massively extend his contract when he is 28 and you may be seeing the best years of him at the moment. And, it's an area in attack where they think they can upgrade. So, again, I had a conversation yesterday at Anfield that made me think that the kind of all possibilities are on the table with Díaz. He could go if the right bid comes in. But equally, if you're already losing Núñez, maybe Chiesa goes early in the window as well. Yeah. It suddenly starts to really add up. So again, managing turnover is a factor here. And I just think personally, and I think I've said this before, is that my ideal situation, I think, for Liverpool is to just do one more year of Díaz. He's flexible. He can play in multiple positions. Great hard worker and a good player who's had a good season. But you don't want to be giving him a pay rise, and he's on cheap wages at the moment. So do one more year, and then maybe everyone can kind of that's when you cash in for slightly less, but you've got another season to manage the transition. I just think that makes sense for everyone really to do one more season. Well, probably doesn't make sense for Díaz, who would love that pay rise, but I think that's kind of the sensible approach in this whole situation. And I do think managing turnover has to be a factor in this summer, because Liverpool are going to have no chance of winning the title if they sell 7 or 8 for me. So Díaz, it's a possibility, but I think others would have to stay who maybe didn't want to. And like I say, I think ideal situation is maybe he does one more year.
Yeah, it does. If he is going to go, it's got to be for someone who comes in who's going to bona fide start, and you'd look and go, I get why they've made that deal. That's a quality player. I understand that. So sometimes easier said than done. But we'll see what this week brings with more rumours, transfers and contract talk. But in the weirdest way, I mean, for this coming week, it's miles away till the next game. A week today, Brighton with a Monday night away at the Amex Stadium. Liverpool are off to Dubai, what everyone's being told. They may already be there for all reports. Do we know what the purpose of that trip is? Is it bonding, warm weather training? Because I think everyone's a little bit scratching their head with that one at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I doubt it's warm weather training, to be honest. I've not personally kind of had it stood up that they are there this week. To be honest, it's not something I've kind of checked. And I got sidelined yesterday with work with the whole Trent Alexander-Arnold situation, so it wasn't kind of something that ended up kind of coming up. But it's. If they have indeed gone, and as I say, I'm not personally sure about that one yet, and I probably should check that today. Actually, I would imagine it'd be more along the lines of a kind of get together to celebrate what they've achieved, rather than anything to do with warm weather training, or there's no real reason to prepare for anything, is there? So I guess just to thank the players for what they've done, and as I say, it's kind of. That's what this last part of the season should be. They've put in so much this season, and a very small group of players have been they've put in an awful lot of work. So I guess it's just really helpful for them to relax and make the most of these last few weeks where they don't have to put it in that huge intensity and really can put their feet up and enjoy each other's company. And, maybe a few discussions towards next season and what's happening and who's staying, who's going. But outside of that, I hope, spending a few hours on a sun lounge and maybe having a couple of cocktails and just enjoying the fruits of the labour, because the reason that they've got all this free time is because they've wrapped the title up so early.
Which, to be fair, seems exactly how they prepared for Arsenal based on social media and different bits as well. And shout out to Kem there saying there's too many gaps to be filled to be losing Díaz. The left side of the attack is fine at the moment. Focus elsewhere, and that may well come into play as well. That's
exactly it. That is spot on in terms of Liverpool have already got so much to do, and particularly in attack, you factor in already Núñez, Chiesa. Then you start to get to Gomez, Tsimikas, Quansah. Trent is going, Endo, Elliott, all these other doubts that you've got in the squad around who potentially could go. They're just surely going to want to limit that. And Díaz, with 2 years left on his deal, it'd be so easy to just keep him for one more year and then just, kick the can down the road a little bit. And I think Liverpool should do that. Not saying that's definitely in concrete yet, because as I say, as far as I'm aware, in every conversation I've had, all possibilities are on the table. But I think that would be the smart move.
Yeah, does feel that way. And Malcolm Billington there saying, I take it Chiesa is leaving as well. Well, Malcolm, you can quote this. Dave Davis, 12th of May. Yes, if Chiesa's not here next season, I'll eat my hat, put it that way. And back to, I suppose, the Brighton element. With this one, and there is a little bit of intrigue still the end of the season, because Chelsea was full experimentation. Yesterday was strongest. Are we leaning more towards Chelsea or Arsenal for this one?
Yeah, interesting, really. I guess the motivation in this one was kind of wanting to lay a glove on Arsenal and prove a point, really, in terms of there is a gap. So maybe go back to strongest for that. Maybe Brighton is a chance to show a little bit more rotation. Maybe not as much as Chelsea, where it's 6 changes, I think, but maybe 2 or 3. Can you give Elliott another game? Can Endo come in? And beyond that, maybe kind of not do much else, really. So, he just doesn't need to go strong, does he? I don't know, really. I guess it's what he sees from that one day of training they probably do in the week at the moment, and make his call on that. But it's, probably a tough one to predict, in all honesty, really. And they're not training loads at the moment. So, I guess the honest answer to that is that actually, on consideration, that is actually quite a tough one to predict. But I guess if it is one game a week, maybe you can go strong with a couple of changes. Maybe that's the way they will go for it.
You really honestly wouldn't bet either way on this, because nothing would surprise you based on the lineup. But I suppose the final thing into this lineup, and I've seen, because people have mentioned Chiesa, and maybe the best thing about yesterday was his song on the concourse. That was ringing around Anfield, wasn't it? People were buzzing with that one. But for these last few games, and people have commented on this, it doesn't really feel like anyone's got a chance to, quote unquote, save their career. You feel that Slot will have already made decisions on Chiesa, Núñez, Elliott, Endo. 2 games for now are not going to make one jot of difference to the decisions, are they?
No, exactly. Because the thing is, as well, he's seen them in training all season as well. So, it's not like Chiesa could come in and score a hat-trick at Brighton and he's going to suddenly think, I've got to keep this guy or whatever. Yeah. Or even you would say for Elliott that he can do enough in these games to make sure he's a nailed-on starter for next season. That process has got to go into next season, and he's got to kind of prove the point whenever he gets the chances, which I'd say he didn't really do at Chelsea. So I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for things to massively change in these games, really. Even if there is a bit of experimentation in the lineup, it's all about just getting the games played and getting to the end of the season.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And I suppose the end of the season, the Champions League race. Final question, I suppose, wider Premier League, because no one saw Southampton getting a point against Manchester City, and that top 7 is really bunched up nicely. 6 points separating them entirely. Still think it'll be the 2 like Forest, Villa missing out, or do you think it's changing at all?
I watched Forest yesterday and I was like, it's so struggling so much to see how they get in with the way that they're playing at the moment. They've been awful. I mean, the thing is, I guess for them is that they've spent so much of the season being like within half an expected goal of the opposition and somehow winning the game, either put for or against. It's at some point that's going to catch up with you, and it's catching up with them massively at the moment, and they're just not playing well. I mean, the saving grace for them is they've got Chelsea on the final day, haven't they? So they just need to stay in touch with them and make sure that that if they win that game, they kind of that will get them over the line. I guess that the one to watch actually, I guess, is Villa, because they are in great form at the moment, and they've got 2 sides now in the next game. Tottenham are thinking about the Europa League final, and then straight after that, it's Manchester United, who will have just played the Europa League final. So that's lined up very, very nicely for them, and Chelsea are wobbling a bit. So every chance that maybe Aston Villa can sneak in there. So genuinely, you wouldn't be shocked if Forest pulled it out of the bag and beat Chelsea on the last day either. So it's all there, really. I think you can say comfortably Arsenal are in. Obviously, Newcastle, I think, with the way that they're playing at the moment, they absolutely deserve to be in there. And I think City will do enough, won't they? Because they're getting there in the end, and they've played slightly better. in recent weeks, but predicting what happens below that fifth place, I am really struggling to say what it'll be, really. And yeah, it kind of feels like a flip of the coin, really. So I quite like it to not be Chelsea on a personal level, but in terms of what it actually be, that is really tough to pick.
Yeah, it is a tough one. It will probably go, well, it is going to go right down to that last day as well. But I mean, the final word, speaking about the last day, for everything that's happening around, almost it feels like a sideshow now, the Trent story, all the other bits. This should still be a celebration, shouldn't it? All the way till the end for number 20. And all this stuff will, sort of drift into noise in the future. But the last day is going to be epic, isn't it?
Yeah, this is why I don't really want Trent Alexander-Arnold involved as well, to be honest, because I just think there's a chance that maybe takes some of the shine off it, and I don't want any of the shine taken off this. This was, the Tottenham game was one of the greatest days I've had at Anfield and seen, really, and been lucky enough to witness. So, you want more of that, and yesterday was teeing up to be that before this kind of distraction was involved. So, I just hope, that the away game at Brighton, whatever, I'd like them to score to get that away game scoring record, but outside of that, whatever. But the last game against Crystal Palace should just be a celebration, regardless of result, regardless of what goes on the pitch. It should be all about just enjoying this huge achievement, which is what it is. So, I just hope it is that, and I hope there's no distractions and that everyone can enjoy it and have a really great day at Anfield. So that's why, I hope I'll be honest, I hope Trent's not involved for that reason, and that it can just go off and be everything that we all kind of dreamed of for quite a long time.
And we'll see if before then the news quietens down, but I suspect it will not, based on what this last few weeks has been like as well. But there we go, ladies and gents. Yesterday, the coming weeks, the coming months, the summer window, we've talked about it all, which means all I've got left to do as ever is, David, for your time, your insight, and answering all the questions and providing full Frimpong context there. It is much appreciated.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.